Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you to AFSA for inviting me here today to talk about my favourite subject, me. I can talk about me forever, so I've got to squeeze it into an hour and I'll try my best. So this is my story so far about being a disabled person born in UK from a South Asian background, and some of the challenges that I've had to overcome, obstacles that I've had to come, etc. And a lot of people said, apparently I've lived quite an interesting life. I didn't realize I've been too busy living it. But everybody around me said, you've done some amazing things, so why don't you start doing more of this? And I am doing a lot of this now. I do at least 1 or 2 a week. So who is this phenomenon that you heard about? I'm 21 years old. Oh, what's so funny? I was born in the late 60s with cerebral palsy. And there's many different forms of cerebral palsy. I have something, a term called diplegia, which basically the right side of my body is slightly tighter than the left, which causes a different gait when I walk. And as I get older, I've got more aches and pains than most people my age. That's my excuse for popping painkillers all the time anyway. I am, my day job, although I don't do much now really, I'm more of an old granddad in the corner. I am the CEO of an organisation in the Midlands called Disability Direct. It is now one of the biggest user-led disabled people support services in the country. I have to say that, because if you Google me, that does come up. A lot of my previous life in politics does come up. I will never be a politician again. It's just a different world. I am the managing director also of my own company, Amo Raju and Associates Limited. I am a associate non-exec in one of the NHS trusts in Derbyshire. I am a columnist for the Disability Review magazine, which is sold Europe-wide. I am the author of Walk Like a Man, and you're all going to buy a book, because if you don't, I won't be eating turkey this Christmas. So, and it's on special offer today, which I'll do you a discount on. I'm talking about that. The gentleman bought it earlier. Apparently I charged you twice. Come and see me afterwards. I am a family guy. I have a wife, a long-suffering wife, 3 adult children and 2 grandchildren. I know I don't look old enough to be a granddad, but I have got 2 lovely grandchildren as well. And I have been described as a rebel with too many causes. I cannot rest. If something annoys me, I get stuck in and start championing those rights. I was a disabled child from a BME background in the 70s and 80s when racism was really high, and there was disabled people weren't seen. You didn't see disabled people in the media. You didn't see them on the streets that often. They were mainly stuck in care homes and residential day services. And so I didn't really have people to look around and say, that person's like me. And I was from 2 protected characteristics, as they are known today. So I had twice the discrimination, twice the harassment, twice the stereotype of what people thought I could and couldn't do. And the first experience of that was from my own South Asian community. I was diagnosed at the age of I think it was about 3 or 4, when my parents said, our child still isn't walking. What's wrong? Something's not quite right. And I was kind of like holding on to things when I was walking instead of walking independently. And an assessment, they said, they were told the child has cerebral palsy, which didn't really mean anything to people who couldn't really understand English very well. So they grew up. In fact, I only found out I had cerebral palsy when I was about 22, when I actually looked into it myself. I just thought I was a bit weak. But the doctor, the consultant at the time, said to my dad, and he said to me many times, because the diagnosis was one thing, but then to be told that your child will probably not amount to anything. your child will probably never have a job, won't be able to drive a car, probably won't be able to get married and have children. And I was basically written off at a very young age. And so my dad, being my dad, wasn't really going to have that. And the experience of ignorance from my own community kind of came when I was about 8 to 9 years old, and I sat in a room, and this is one of the stories you'll pick up in the book. I can't remember why didn't go to school. I was probably skiving, but Rainbow. Remember Rainbow? Rainbow was on TV. Watching Rainbow, and my mum had some friends around, and she went into the kitchen, decided to make some tea, and her friends decided to speak in Punjabi, and loosely translated what these women were saying was, "Isn't it a shame? Look at him, no one's going to marry him. Who's going to give them their daughter? Who's going to give him their daughter?" And for an 8 or 9-year-old, those words stuck in my head. I was too busy watching Zippy and Bungle. And these women decided to write me off too. And that stuck in my head. As a child, you don't need to think those kind of things. But they had planted something in my head which affected me mentally for too long. And it continued. Those kind of comments still happen today. As I say, my book has been out. My book's been out for about a year. And so many people from today's generation of disabled people, particularly from the South Asian community, are saying the same thing. They say, we still have that today. We are still hearing that today. Not for, you had it 40 years ago, the world has moved on, but our community is still stuck in that mindset. And that's a shame. And that's one of the reasons I felt compelled to write that book. I was bullied through school, but I kept it quiet. I didn't tell anyone. I was bullied by 3 little girls, younger than me, who decided that this little kid walks funny, so we will mimic him and we'll make life very uncomfortable for him. So I went from a star pupil to a pretty much average, less than average student overnight. And I didn't achieve, when I left school, I didn't achieve much. In fact, I didn't tell anyone, and I lacked the confidence, and I went into depression. Bouts and bouts of depression as a child, into my teens. And one of the things I'll share with you now, and again, it's in the book, I went for 30 years of therapy, and nobody knew, not even my wife. No, my parents didn't know, my siblings didn't know, my children didn't know, my wife didn't know. My friends didn't know. I didn't tell anyone. 30 years. And I only started talking about my mental health and depression about 3-4 years ago. And I don't know why. I can't think of what triggered me, but I started talking about it. And before I realized it, I was shouting from the rooftops about it. And now I wrote a book about it. I lacked confidence. I didn't mix very well in school. I kind of kept myself to myself. Kids would be playing in the playground at lunchtime. Every chance I got, I would be in the library reading, because I just didn't want to see those 3 little girls. I hid from them. And there's me fashioning Gucci. No, it wasn't. I don't know what it was. But that's the only picture I could find of me as a kid, so that's all I've got. And as I left school, from the day I left school, overnight I became very confident. I became very loud. Why? Why do you think that was? It's because those 3 little girls weren't there anymore. They didn't follow me. I went to college because I tried. My dad said, you're terrible at school, so you're going to do some further education at college. I didn't really do that. My dad, I still haven't told my dad to this day, but I was just sat in the common room drinking all day, chasing girls, which was not very good at the time. And I floated around college being a nuisance. And I entered a talent competition. This is how loud I became. I suddenly became so confident that I went into a talent competition. The college, Derby College at the time, was holding an Asian night. Can't remember what it was. I think it was a Diwali or something. And I entered a talent competition, and I got a record deal. I got a record deal and signed up with Oriental Star Agencies in Birmingham, and I've got 3 records out now. This is a bit where you Google me. There's a YouTube video floating around somewhere, and every now and then I'm driving, and if the BBC Asian Network's on, my song comes on every now and then, which is nice. And I thoroughly enjoyed being someone, because I was a singer. I was well known. Everybody knew me. Every weekend, the Bhangra scene was big in the 80s and early 90s. Every weekend I was booked with my band, and we were out there doing the circuit, making lots of money and just being popular. And the first time I was on stage, nobody was looking at my disability. They were listening to my voice as I was singing. That was what I was hiding behind. I realized many years later that's what was going on. But yeah, so, but it doesn't pay the bills, because I got married. I chased my wife around for 2 years, and she finally gave in and agreed to marry me, and we had 3 little children, and it wasn't paying the bills. And I got very depressed again because the DJ came and killed all the live bands. And so nobody wanted to know me anymore. And there's me doing things. I don't really sing anymore, but that larger photo is, if I go to a wedding, people recognize me and they say, get on stage and do a song. So I will do one if I've had a view. So, but as I say, I got into deep depression. I lost everything. I lost all my money. My wife and I ended up living in a council house with no money. And I got into so much depression, and it was a moment that changed everything. And that moment was I was sitting contemplating. I don't think I was serious about it. I was contemplating the idea of suicide. And I was sitting on a bench in a shopping area where my wife was on the other side of the road. She didn't see me. She was walking with my 3 little children, pushing them along in a pushchair, and she had 50p on her. And she was going to buy kids' clothes for 50p, and I thought, this isn't right. I've got to do something. And just watching her trying to go to haggle with someone for 50p for some kids' clothes, that was enough to wake me up, saying I've got to do something. And one single thing changed everything for me. And boy, was it the right thing. One man saw something in me. I was unemployed, and I was referred to this brand new charity that has been set up in Derby called Disability Direct. They just literally opened their doors, and the severely disabled chap himself took me on as a volunteer in 1994, and he said, you've got something that a lot of other disabled people haven't got. You've got an insight into the outside world of how they treat disabled people. Because you've worked, you've been in a band, you've done things, you've toured, you've got an experience that other people need to see. So he took me under his wing, and after 6 months I became an information officer, information assistant. After about a year I became an information officer. Within 2 years I was services manager, and then he had to retire due to ill health in 1998, and I took over as the CEO. Since then, I haven't got, as I said, I haven't got an education. I'm not a businessman, but something inside me realized that I'm working for my own people, disabled people, and I need to do something for the city. And I've worked flat out. I've generated £25 million in grants and donations and contracts since that day, and my charity now is a 1.6 million turnover a year, of which 1.5 million we generate ourselves. We don't rely on grants. I've got 2 businesses running at the same time, which all the profits come into the charity. In fact, it's so successful that a lot of other charities are using that model. And there's some pictures of me in the media. And then, as I said, I don't know why I did this, but I still can't work out what it was that made me decide I'm going to be a politician. But somebody, all right, I'll tell you what it is. About 7, 8 years ago, I sat there twiddling my thumbs in my office. Because I say I've got 5 very good managers who do all the work now. I just get rolled out in front of a camera whenever, when I need to kind of promote something. And I thought, I need to do something. What do I need to do? And my staff and all my peers around me said, go out there now. You've done everything for disabled people locally. Go and change the city for everyone else. And what's the best way of doing that? Get elected into becoming a prime minister. No. Into a politician. Horrible slip of the tongue, that was. I stood in 2015 and I won in one of the wards. Within a year, I became the cabinet member for leisure, culture and tourism. I don't know why I did what I did. And there's me with Dame Margaret Beckett, who's my MP, and me doing some politician things. But I did actually enjoy it because I was making a change. I was getting things done. I was getting speed bumps added and removed and filling potholes and getting traffic lights put where people didn't want them. And it was all great, but then one thing happened, which reminded me that the world has not changed for disabled people. Something happens to people when they want to attack you. Opposition in that ward decided that Amo Raju is doing some great things. We can't really get him. How can we tarnish his character? So they decided to put a statement out on all their social media that Amo Raju uses his disability for political gain. And in my whole life, I've never done anything where I use my disability for my advantage. If anything, I try to hide behind it sometimes. I hide, or put barriers in front of it myself so nobody could see it. But it was just a step too far for me, and that put me back into depression. And so much that I didn't even bother, when it came to standing for election again, I didn't put any effort into it. I thought, I don't care if I lose. And I did lose. And it wasn't because of me, it was because the Labour Party in Derby was just terrible at the time. And a load of us got punished at the ballot box. And what happened was my board of trustees at Disability Direct said, Amo, you don't seem to be doing anything about this. I said, look, I've run out of steam. What do you want me to do? So they said, well, bugger this. They went and took the battle themselves and put a complaint in, and he was taken to the standards board and had to apologise formally. It actually hit the national press at the time as well. But it reminded me that the world hasn't changed for disabled people. Here I am trying to be a politician and changing the wider community about the other things that are important in life, but disabled people need me. So I went back to my day job, happily. Everybody around me was crying on the night I lost my election. I wasn't. I was laughing my head off. I was thinking, this is brilliant. Got my excuse now to get back to my day job. A lot of people think that the problem's with me, that I'm overcoming issues that are in my head. Anybody know about the social and medical definition models of disability? So the social model is all about society needs to change, not cure the impairment. And this is all about the social model. My aim is to try and preach the social model as much as I can. And that social model doesn't apply just to disabled people. It applies to people of colour, people from the LGBT community. The world around us needs to adapt to a moving, progressive society. And the problem is, the first thing the world does is say, we don't need to change, you're the problem, you're the one that's on your pedestal shouting out, and somebody actually said to me, So what if you wrote on social media that you take advantage of disability? And even if you don't, what's the big deal? I said, because he's creating an image that disabled people do that. And that's not the case. Well, I don't do that. I wouldn't look too favourably on anybody else that did. And as I say, what actually disables me is everybody else's opinion around me. I'll give you another example of, again, something else that's in the book. Just before I started at Disability Direct, as I said, I was in depression. And a group of people decided that Amo Raju needs to be doing something constructive in his life instead of sitting on the dole feeling sorry for himself. So they said, you need to go to this day centre. There's a day centre where disabled people go. Now, I didn't know what a day centre was. I'd never even heard of them. And I reluctantly went. And I went in within the first 2 hours. I saw a room full of disabled people basket weaving or making wooden birdhouses and just basically vegetating, not doing anything constructive. And I said, is that what everybody around me thinks I'm capable of? I stormed out of there and I made a remark to the manager at the time. I said, I'll be back. No, that's a bit Schwarzenegger, but I said, I will be back. I didn't realise that. I didn't think I was going to be back. Move the clock forward 15 years. I signed a contract with Derby City Council to take over that day centre. And I walked in, and that same manager was there. He didn't recognise me. I was just another disabled person to me, and my assistant, she knew the story and she was itching to say something to him. And I just let him have his moment, and she couldn't help it. She goes, he's going to be your boss. And he said, you're all right. And I still said, you don't recognise me, do you? And he says, why? And I told him, I said, years ago I came here and you said this is what I'm capable of. And I'm going to sign a contract where I'm now your gaffer. Surprisingly, he didn't last long. I think he resigned after about 3-4 months. But it is about changing attitudes, and it is about getting people aware of what can be done, not what cannot be done. And that's one of the first mistakes a lot of people make when they look at a disabled person is, all right, they can't do that. What you need to think about is what can they do? And that's where the kind of thing I'm trying to teach people. But it is exhausting, I'll be honest with you. Disabled people have to work at 150% constantly because we're not only trying to prove to everyone else that we are capable of doing something, we end up having to prove to ourselves that we can do it. And it's mentally exhausting. And so you'll see a lot of people frustrated all the time. But now, as I say, I'm doing a lot of this now simply because my board of trustees have said, you're not leaving us, because they know I'm getting pulled in a lot of directions. And they've said, we want you out there spreading the word. People need to see examples of you and how disabled people can overcome things and be professionals as well. So, as I say, I'm a columnist. I'm in the public eye. And early this year, I won the Outstanding Achievement. What did I win? Yeah. Outstanding Achievement for the third sector at the UK's very first British Sikh Awards in Birmingham. And I was just awarded a doctorate by the university for my services to the voluntary sector and disabled. Oh. Thank you. But again, this is what I want to do now, is go out there and show the world that disabled people can do things. Did I mention I've got a book out? I've got a book out. It's called Walk Like a Man. And as I say, it's doing really well. This was written during lockdown. It was written mainly because my wife said, I don't want you annoying me, just get on and do something. But seriously, I did write it, and I joined up with a co-writer called Manny Hare, who who really kind of, it was an interesting experience because I wrote good chunks of the book and then passed it over to Manny. But Manny wanted more. She wanted to get inside my head. Don't know why. But she went in, for her to do that, we had weekly Zoom meetings, and it was like a counselling session all over again. I was in therapy again, and she didn't realise that every time I ended the conversation on Zoom, sometimes I'd burst into tears because I was reliving the whole thing again, and it was great because that's when I first realised that I've got a story to tell. I actually have got a story to tell. As I say, I was a singer, I was a politician, I'm a CEO, I'm a columnist. I've done things that I think they said not disabled people, not just disabled people, but most of the population doesn't do. And they said, well, this is what needs to be out there. And so I'm doing a lot of this now. I'm doing a lot of these talks. Next week or week after, it's International Day of Disabled People. I'm doing 4 of these events on that weekend itself, which is going to be quite tiring. And I'm just chuffed that the world wants to know and it wants to hear that there are disabled people out there doing positive things. What else is there? So what's next for me? I don't think I've finished yet. And I'm only 21. I've got my whole life ahead of me. My plan is to exit Disability Direct by 2026, but they keep doing things which they're not giving me more money. If you think they're going to keep me by more, they're not giving me more money. They just kind of emotionally blackmail me and say, you're staying here. And it works. Never. It's not happening. I'm not doing politics again. They rang me 2 weeks ago saying, come on, it's this elections. I said, it's not happening. I don't fancy it. I'm here on the side. I'm quite happy. My book this looks like it's being turned into a play or a movie. They're working on the script now. When you buy the book, you'll realize there's a lot of dialogue in there, and a scriptwriter who works at Channel 4 read it and says, I love this, and so he's got together with 1 or 2 others, and they think they're going to turn it into a book. They just can't. I said they just can't find anyone good looking enough to play me. That's the problem. I have started on a second book. It's not about disabled people. It's just about what's wrong with the world in general. I think that's just me having a midlife crisis, moaning. So I have started that, but I don't know when I'll finish it. And I do a lot of mentoring. I now have, I think I've got about 6 next generation CEOs and leaders that have started having weekly or monthly Zoom meetings with me. They're all from across the country, and they just want to pick my brains. I think I'm more of a therapist to them more than anything, but they're just kind of sounding off ideas and thoughts to me. And I am just going to be a pain in the neck to society, to be honest with you. If I get bored, then I start finding things to be annoyed about, and it normally involves me writing letters and emails to people. But I just get on with it. I can't faff around. I hate faffing around. I hate people who just procrastinate and look for excuses why things aren't happening, or should we do this, should we not do that. If you look at my website, amoraju.com, anybody wants to see it, my strap line on there, which everybody kind of has a laugh about, but it is true. My staff actually said it about me, is that whilst you're sitting there thinking about it, I've done it. I can't be bothered. I went to a conference like this once, and they announced some funding at this conference, and I was in the audience, and whilst they were talking about the bid, the application form, I had my laptop out. I'd written 3/4 of the bid while they were talking. I just can't faff about it. I said, right, I know what I want to do. Bang, bang, bang. Submitted it on that evening, got the funding for 40 grand. Very nice. So, I've always creating myself. This is me doing things for myself. No one's given me a template. As I said at the beginning, I didn't have role models. There weren't other disabled people who, from my background, who looked like me. There weren't any disabled people at all in the media that I could say, I want to be like him or her. I had to make it up for myself. And so that's why I always say, go out there and create your own self, your own kind of success. No one's going to do it for you. You've got to do it yourself. Any questions or thoughts?
Thanks so much for sharing your story. I'm Jax.
Hiya.
I just want to know how your family have kept you motivated. What's their energy and drive been for you?
Love and support constantly. My wife is, as I said, I call her long-suffering. She is. I don't know why she's stuck with me. I am annoying, but she drives me, she motivates me. My wife was a non-disabled person when she met me. 5 years ago, she got MS. And so I always thought in my old age she's going to look after me, but we've ended up kind of looking after each other now. And it's a strange thing. She's got a hidden disability. You can't see her. She's got relapsing MS. And so it's a strange kind of relationship, but she looks after me and I look after her. And my children, I mean, and when you read the book, you realize my children aren't in the book because they say I'm just I'm in the public eye too much and they don't want it. So I've kept them out of it. My wife does make a guest appearance at the end. But yeah, my family motivate me. My mum and dad, they kicked my back. They still kick my backside today. They're in their 70s. And you know, they still say, get out there and do it. Stop moaning, stop whinging. And you know, and those kind of, that drive, that love and support that a person needs. You know, whether you're disabled or whatever you think is the issue that's affecting you, or whether what element in society is that's affecting you, if you've got a loving family around you, anything is possible. And I think that's been a real driver behind me. Over there, somewhere. Yes?
Hi, Alan.
Hiya.
Karina from West Yorkshire.
Hi.
You're an absolute inspiration, totally.
Thank you.
It's been really lovely to hear your story. You know, regarding your book and having somebody to be an actor for you, why don't you do that yourself? Another string in your bow?
Well, the thing is, we're looking for someone to play me in the 90s. I was a lot slimmer then. And I had a lot more hair. But no, apparently I'm going to play myself in the latter years. But in the early days, they're looking for a younger, very good-looking version of me.
Hello, nice.
Hiya.
Nice to hear your story. Absolutely, it's inspirational. I'm from West Yorkshire as well. My question is, being an optimist, not a pessimist, I think that's the wrong word. Being an optimist and a realist, how long do you think it's going to change to evolve the actual culture in Britain vis-a-vis the disability and race, if you like, relations? And how can we speed this process up? Thank you.
I think the world is changing, not as fast as I'd like. I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. But I think, you know, today we have a Prime Minister from South Asian background. We have disabled people doing some great stuff. They've got their own TV shows. There are comedians out there doing stuff. So I think the world is changing, but I don't think it's going to be as fast as I'd like it. You're probably looking at another 50 years before we, you know, our children, my grandchildren, they will probably see some things. You know, I've always said to my son, I says, just keep an eye out when I've long gone of the things that I used to complain about, are they still there? And I'm hoping they won't be, but the world needs to educate itself. Discrimination. When I started at Disability Direct in 1995, you'll recall, because you're all in that field, the Disability Discrimination Act came out in 1995. I was discriminated and harassed in 2018. Nothing's changed. The world still feels confident. You know, today, after Brexit, the rise of racism again. The world needs to re-educate itself. And unfortunately, the only place that's going to happen is in schools, and the schools' budgets are cut. My daughter's a teacher now in Maidenhead, and she's not allowed to have too many conversations around race because it does upset some of the children. And disability, gosh, I mean, I've started going into schools because at the headmaster's request and having a session on disability. But I get asked so often, I have to turn them down now because I don't get time to do my day job, and they don't want to pay me because they haven't got the budgets. But you've got to put money behind these kind of investments. You can't just have a disability policy or a race policy. You've got to put money behind it, and that's where everyone fails. It costs money to change the world. It's not going to happen for free. I'm afraid that's the harsh truth. Any other questions or thoughts? No. Right, this is where you do a mad rush to buy the book. But look, no, seriously, I hope you've enjoyed today. My contact details are here. I am very big on Instagram now. No, I'm not really. I've got, I'm on TikTok. I'm so cool and happening.
Give us a song.
Oh no. Oh no, no. You can YouTube me. I'm on YouTube somewhere.
Our DJ play something in the background. Give us a couple of lines.
Oh gosh, no, I can't do it.
You're an Asian wedding.
I don't see any whiskey and vodka on the table.
Make it happen.
I will one day, but not today. Sore throat. But find me on Instagram, Amo Raju Official, TikTok, Amo Raju Official. I'm also on Twitter somewhere, I think. Oh yeah, I am on Twitter, Amo Singh Raju. Stay in touch. Look, it's about having conversations. If you email me, I promise you I will respond to the email. I don't ignore emails, and I do get lots of emails. So, but I just want to have a conversation. I want to keep that dialogue going with people. There's no point me just coming here and you forgetting me now and going on to your day jobs. Keep that conversation going with me. If you need me in your day job, talk to me. I won't always charge. And when I do, I'm pretty cheap. Thank you.